also talked about I think we ended with this one, determinants of health. Okay, and these are the determinants of health, which are about 8. So you have to remember them and expand on them when the question comes. And we all know what are they. There's nothing great to, mug up the paragraphs, but just the points. We talked about spectrum of health. We all know what is ecology of health. This question has come only once in the exam. Ecology of health, we all know what is the meaning of the word ecology, and so you can write something that it comes from the word oikos, which means health. A mutual relationship between living organisms and their environment is what is ecology. So we are all dependent on our surroundings, and therefore our health depends on our surroundings and the environment. That is what is ecology and health. And therefore you have to describe them as far as physical, chemical, biological, psychological, and cultural aspects of the man-made environment and the natural environment is concerned. It is given in the book in a page. The question has come only once and Fox does, but in case it comes again, write that it is a relationship between the environment and human being and the human being's health. That's all. If you understand this concept, then you can elaborate on it. So I'll not waste much of time here, and I'll go to more important aspects. Of course, ecology depends on urbanization, industrialization, deforestation. We have been spoiling our environment, land reclamation, construction of irrigation canals, dams, barrages, roads, buildings, everything. So we have been interfering with the environment, and therefore we have now faced the effects in the form of global warming and other things that we all know. So you must write a certain aspect of the environment and then elaborate on it. As far as the radiation in the environment is concerned, you will cover this up in environment chapter, which Mayuri madam is taking, and I won't elaborate on this. Global warming is also there in the chapter on environment. Right to health is something that we all know. We all have a right to health. Everyone has a right to standard of living and health and well-being, right? You can't say that he's a beggar or he's a poor person. He doesn't have any right to live or have a healthy life. So all of us know this. It's a fundamental right kind of thing. We have read this in civics in our class 10 and class 12, so we can elaborate on it in case a question comes, but it has never come. So we all know we have a right for health. Now, responsibility for health, right now in COVID times, it's an individual responsibility. It's a community responsibility. It's a national responsibility. It's an international responsibility. If you close your eyes and think about COVID, you will find all these things coming up. In individual, we have to wash our hands, wear a mask, keep distance. In community, the community as a whole should follow the rules, not go out, maintain the discipline of lockdown, or you can say partial unlocking. In national level, we have got various policies by the ICMR and the NCDC and the government of India, like the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, which has brought out several directives and we are supposed to follow. Internationally, there are bodies like the CDC and the WHO, which are working day in, day out for protection and promotion of health. Okay, so this is what is the responsibility of health. In case a question comes, always remember to write from the lowest to the highest level, that is individual, community, national, and then international. Your book gives a lot of paragraphs about individual and community and all that. You can have one look at it, and I think you will understand, and you will be able to expand on your own. Okay, there's no need to teach you or make you aware of these things. All of us are aware. So I'll quickly rush through these slides, and I'll come down to these health programs are the national responsibility and international responsibility. As I told you, there are various world bodies like WHO, UNICEF, the CDC, and the other things which are responsible for the health part, right? So that's the concept of health. I couldn't complete it last time, but now we are done with concepts of health. And I have talked about the standard of living, the level of living, and the various indices, the most important being PQLI. Okay, so we'll quickly shift on to the next part of health, which is health and development and the indices, which are important. Okay, and you must appreciate that the indices will be covered in various chapters like population dynamics, like nutrition, like environment, but we will have an overall look of the indices here. Sometimes the questions have come on indicators of health, and you got to concise about 10 pages in 1 or 2 paragraphs, which is difficult. But you must understand the concept and write about a few. Well, health and development, there's a history of health. We have all come a long way from, a very, very poor country with very, very poor sanitation and hygiene standards. There was a great sanitary awakening in the world, and we have now achieved certain standards. The state of Kerala, which is the southernmost state of India, and is the most, advanced as far as health is concerned. So the Kerala model is supposed to be followed by all the states, and we all know what are the reasons for the indices being the best in Kerala. Because of the more number of paramedical workers, healthcare delivery to the people is easy. In Andhra Pradesh or Telangana, the paramedical workers are less, so healthcare cannot reach the masses. Kerala is considered as a yardstick for judging health status in the country. Okay, just a general knowledge kind of thing. We must know this and not elaborate much on the Kerala model, but just keep somewhere in the back of your mind in case a question comes. You can always say why Kerala is the best. So we quickly come down to the health indicators, and they are many. According to the WHO guidelines for health program evaluation, these are defined as variables which help measure changes. Initially, only I told you health is dynamic. It can't be measured with a scale or, say, a ruler or with a weighing machine only. So therefore, we require certain indicators to measure health. How will I know that India is ahead of this country or behind this country as far as health standards are concerned? So we compare health indices. One of the health indices, in a way you can say, we have already discussed is PQLI. That is the Physical Quality of Life Index. We had Human Development Index. These are a mixture of various indices. Health or nutritional status, which cannot be measured directly, are measured by indicators. It provides us clues to tackle the different health problems efficiently. There are various characteristics of indicators. We will cover this again in the chapter of screening, but I'll quickly rush through it. I'll say the characteristics of indicators are they should be valid, they should be reliable and objective, and they should be sensitive. These are English words. But when it comes to community medicine or, say, medicine, they have a little different connotation. We will discuss them one by one when we go to the chapter on screening. But for now, remember that the characteristics of indicators are that they should be valid, they should be reliable, they should be objective. Objectives means they should be to the point, and they should be sensitive to the changes in situation concerned, right? They should be specific. We will discuss about specificity also later. They should be feasible. I mean, you can't just say that I'll measure this and that. You have to have a feasible kind of measurement, and they should be relevant according to today's times. So there are various characteristics of health indicators, and these health indicators are a number of them, like mortality, morbidity, disability, nutritional, healthcare delivery, utilization rates, and indicators of social and mental health, environmental indicators, socio-economic indicators, health policy indicators, indicators of quality of life, which we have already covered, and certain others. So what I'm saying is, you must, at least for starters, have all the headings of indicators in your mind. When there's a question on indicators of health, at least you must write these, say about 11 or 10 of these indicators. Just remember the chapters in the book and you will get the indicators in your mind. Environment, okay, utilization rates, healthcare delivery, these are chapters in your book. Nutrition, okay, these are chapters in your book. Health policies, these are chapters in your book. And of course, indicators of quality of life. Mortality, morbidity, disability, these are the three most important among all these. Rest of these things will be covered as and when we cover the chapters. Like when you have done nutrition, you will have read about nutritional indicators. Now that you're going through environment, you will also learn about environmental indicators. Similarly, when we teach you the chapter on sociology or mental health, we will tell you about some indicators in those chapters. So remember, this is all encompassing. You will have these indicators spread out in all the chapters, which will be covered. Like Madam Buleshwari has covered the mother and child health. There are various indicators there. Maternal mortality, infant mortality. These are all indicators, okay? So you have to include them. At least when there's a short note, write the headings and write some of the important indicators, explaining one or two. Depends on the time that you have at hand. What are the mortality indicators? Crude death rate. It is defined as the number of deaths per thousand population per year in a given community. We will again cover this in the practical classes, which we are again taking online now, I believe. Karthik sir is taking. So clinical postings, we used to cover all these indicators in the chapters on statistics or biostatistics. So it is defined as the number of deaths per thousand population per year in a given community. Please remember the PERS, number of deaths per thousand per year. Okay, crude death rate. Usefulness of crude death rate is restricted because it is influenced by age, sex composition of the population. Now there are more older people dying, less younger people dying, and perhaps a little bit more in the middle age. So it doesn't give you the indicators of death per se by age. So we have to go to age specific death rates. Crude death rate is called crude because it doesn't take into account the age sex composition. Females are dying less, males are dying more. This is also not taken into account. So the question in the Viva will be to you is, why is crude death rate called as crude? Okay, so you have to explain that crude because it doesn't take into cognizance the age sex composition of the population. Along with death rate, we have something called as expectation of life. Now, life expectancy at birth is defined as the average number of years that will be lived by those born alive into a population if the current age-specific mortality rates persist. Please mug up these definitions. You cannot dilly-dally in these. You cannot say half a definition and expect marks. Okay, it is the average number of years that will be lived by those born alive into a population if the current age-specific mortality rates persist. When I was born years ago, then the age-specific mortality was different. Today, the people who are born today, they will live longer perhaps than me because the age-specific mortality rates have reduced. The population is now more geriatric. People are living normally up to 80, 90 years of age. Okay, in our times or perhaps our fathers' times, people used to die at 50, 55, 60. So therefore, age-specific mortality rates, they differ. And a person who's born today and a person like you who's born 20 years back will have different life expectancy at birth. So therefore, remember, life expectancy at birth is the average number of years that will be lived by those born alive into the population if the current age-specific mortality rates persist. You have to learn these definitions. You will be asked these definitions in Viva. Sometimes there can be a short note and you have to just define it properly. The moment you define it properly, the examiner knows that you know. If you just make your own definition at that time, you will lose marks. So infant mortality rate, you know about this, must have been taught to you, and I won't explain this further. It's a very, very important mortality rate. And we will tell you about the latest mortality rates when we teach you the infant mortality rate in practicals. This is the child mortality rate. Now, infant is somebody who's below 1 year. Child is somebody who's 1 to 4 years. Sometimes we call this as preschool age. Okay? So we have 2-3 definitions. One is under 5. A child who's under 5 is also a very, very important and vulnerable individual. Similarly, we have school age or preschool age children. So 1 to 4 years is known as child. Below 1 year is known as infant. All these things you know. And therefore, we have a child mortality rate. There are various causes of death amongst children. We will elaborate, or maybe they have been already told to you before. Under 5 mortality rate is the proportion of total deaths occurring in under 5 age group. Okay, so under 5, 1 to 4, below 1, that is infant. Then we have maternal mortality rate, which must have been explained to you in detail by Madam Valeshwari. Let's not waste time here. Then we have disease-specific mortality. Mortality rate because of TB, mortality rate because of corona, mortality rate because of HIV. So we have disease-specific mortality. Okay? Then we have proportional mortality rate. It is the proportion of all deaths contributed by a particular disease. So many people are dying in India. Out of them, how many people are dying because of TB? How many people are dying because of corona? Out of 100 people dying in India today, every 30 deaths are because of corona. So therefore, proportional mortality rate of corona is 30%. So this is how we calculate proportional mortality rate. We have a very important thing out here, which is called as International Death Certificate. Please remember, we have to fill up a death certificate as a medical officer when somebody dies in the casualty or wherever you are giving a duty. And therefore, we got to fill up this medical certificate properly. International Death Certificate is common across the world. There are points like 1 and 2. That is part 1. If you see, there is part 1 and there is part 2. Part 2 is what is the cause of death. And part 1. And part 2 is other significant causes, what we call as comorbidities nowadays. A chap may die of corona, but he has got diabetes and hypertension, which are mentioned below the line, okay, in part 2. So in part 1, you mentioned the disease or condition directly leading to death, which is A, B, C, whatever you want to write. And in part 2, you write any other significant conditions which may have accelerated his condition, which may have contributed to the death. I hope you get this. International Death Certificate is a very, very important document to fill up. All of us must know this. We will be taught all this during internship also. There are various uses of mortality data and there are various limitations. All those things we can always cover up when we read the text. We need not elaborate on these things here. Okay. As I told you, there can be specific death rates, specific due to a disease or specific group. That is a race or a sex, or you can say a particular age group or a cohort. So we have TB death rates and corona death rates and all that. Then we have something called as case fatality rate. Now, case fatality rate or CFR is the killing power of a disease. I think it is slightly vague because it is red on red, but please remember it is the total number of deaths due to a disease divided by total number of cases due to the same disease. In case we have about 1,000 cases of corona and there are about 100 deaths. So the case fatality rate is 100 divided by 1,000 into 100, which comes to about 10%. So case fatality rate is a very, very important thing. Those of you who read the newspapers or who see the news or listen to the news, you may hear this word very often related with corona. Proportional mortality rate, I already told you, number of deaths from the specific disease divided by number of deaths from all causes. I've already told you, it's a repetition. Now, there is something called a survival rate, which is mostly used in context of cancers or carcinomas. It is calculated the total number of patients alive after 5 years divided by total number of patients diagnosed or treated. Okay, there are 5-year survival rates and 10-year survival rates. We gauge the killing power or the importance of a cancer through survival rates. We often read that the survival rate, 5-year survival rate of lung cancer is very poor, whereas the 5-year survival rate of colon cancer is perhaps a bit higher and higher than the survival rate of lung cancer. We have adjusted or standardized rates. These are used for comparing death rates between two populations with different age composition. Therefore, we standardize. We will read about it in the chapter on epidemiology a little more. There is direct and indirect standardization. Don't worry on this. We will tell you about these things when we teach you epidemiology. Then, after mortality, there is morbidity. Any departure, subjective or objective, from a state of well-being is called as morbidity. I told you there is nothing to define disease. The WHO has defined health way back about 70 years ago, but it has not defined disease. But we can have our own definition. Any departure, subjective or objective, from a state of well-being that is equivalent to sickness, illness, disability is known as morbidity. Now, there are various morbidity rates. Principal among them are incidence and prevalence. These are short notes. Incidence and prevalence are also Viva questions. they may be asked in the exam. Incidence. It is defined as a number of new cases occurring in a defined population during a specified period of time. Please remember, incidence is new cases. Prevalence is new and old. It refers to all current cases, old and new, existing at a given point in time or during a defined period of time. Okay? Please remember incidence and prevalence. Very, very simple to remember. Every time in the exam we ask this question. And some of you who are good, they can answer, but many of you can make this simple thing so complicated that later on after you leave the Viva, we have a good smile. Incidence, new cases. Prevalence, old and new cases together, right? This is the simplest it can be. So what do you write about incidence? Number of new cases of a specific disease during a given time period divided by population at risk during that period. I'll tell you what is population at risk a little later when we cover the chapter on epidemiology. Not little, maybe 1 or 2 classes. In 2000. Please remember, in 2000, number of new cases of a specific disease during a given time period divided by population at risk during that period. We are now learning mathematics, friends. We have shifted from community medicine to indicators, which are multiplications and divisions. These will be again repeated in the clinical postings for you all, but remember that they are very, very pet questions in the exam. For example, if there are 500 cases of illness in a population of 30,000, the incidence rate would be 500 divided by 30,000 into 1,000, which is 16.7 per 1,000 per year. Our maths teacher always told us to write the units. Please remember, many of you in the exam, they just write 16.7, but they don't write per 1,000 per year. The answer is incomplete if you just write a figure. You have to write the unit along with it. Now, what are the uses of incidence? To control disease, for research into etiology and pathogenesis, distribution of disease, and efficacy of preventive and therapeutic measures. How far your prevention and control measures have been effective in curbing the new cases is what is the use of incidence rates. Now we come to prevalence. Prevalence can be of 2 types, point and period. They both mean the same thing, but we will elaborate on this a little later. Point prevalence is number of all current cases of a specific disease existing at a given point in time divided by estimated population at the same point in time into 100. Please is expressed in percentage. The previous one was into 1,000. Prevalence is into 100. Don't ask me the reason for it. This is the way the statisticians have been calculating incidence and prevalence. Now, what is period prevalence? Nothing. But the word a given point in time is replaced by a given period in time. The number of existing cases of a specified disease during a given period of time interval divided by estimated population at risk. Okay, so that is what is period prevalence. Please remember point prevalence and period prevalence. Period prevalence helps us to estimate the magnitude of health or disease problems in the community and identify potential high-risk population. Prevalence rates are especially useful for administrative and planning purposes. So as a student, as a teacher, as a faculty, perhaps we use more of point prevalence. Period prevalence is used by planners, people sitting in the state government, people sitting in the national government. They will use the prevalence rates, period prevalence rates, and they will formulate their own administrative and planning policies. Okay? So period prevalence and point prevalence, remember that. Now, this diagram, where is that going? Yeah, this diagram makes it a little clear. This is in your book. Now, see the new cases. They are case number 3, case number 4, case number 5, and case number 8. So, incidence is 4, whereas prevalence is all the cases, barring 4 perhaps, barring all the cases, barring case 6. Okay, because that has happened after December 31st. In case somebody asks you the prevalence of disease in this year, from Jan 1st to 31st of December, you will say case 1, case 2, case 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, all these are prevalent. Whereas the new cases are case 3, 4, 5, and 8. Okay? Are you with me? The new cases are the incidence rates, all the cases which are existing in a given point of time or a given period of time are the prevalence rates. There is a formula which relates prevalence with incidence. This is also an exam question. It is simple. P is equal to I and D. Prevalence is equal to incidence into mean duration of the disease. Remember this, P is equal to ID. So these are the same things that we have discussed. Now we come to disability rates. There are two types, event type indicators and person type indicators. Okay? Event type indicators are number of days of restricted activity. I have a disability, I fractured my hand, so I am restricted for a number of days. I am COVID positive, I am restricted into self-quarantine for 14 days. So you can say event type. Bed disability days, work or school loss days or college loss days like you people are having right now. You're losing on college, though we are trying to cover up the portion by online classes. Then we have person type indicators where we have limitation of mobility and limitation of activity. So these are the two types of disability rates that we have. Well, this is not given in the book anymore, Sullivan's Index, but sometimes old timers ask you in the Viva or in the exam. So you can note it down. The index is computed by subtracting from the life expectancy the probable duration of bed disability and inability to perform major activities. In my lifetime, suppose I lived till 80 years, I had 5 months of hospitalization, maybe because of jaundice, maybe because of some fracture or something. So minus 5 months from my life expectancy, and I was admitted in the hospital for about 14 days. So minus 14 more days, that becomes Sullivan's Index. Subtracting from the life expectancy the probable duration of bed disability and inability to perform major activities. Just like I gave an example to you, suppose I am confined to my house because of quarantine. So therefore, I am not able to perform my major duties, which is like coming to college, teaching, or going out and doing some job, or going and purchasing something. So I am limited in my activity. That part of the life, that few months get subtracted from my life expectancy. Similarly, in my childhood, I had a fracture. I was admitted in the hospital for about 15 days. So 15 days get minused from my life expectancy. Therefore, in my case, Sullivan's Index is the probable expectancy of my life minus the duration of bed disability and inability to perform major activities. Remember this, not given in the new edition, important from the exam point of view, just make a note of it. Then your book gives you various other indices like health adjusted life expectancy or HALE. Health adjusted life expectancy is nothing but the life expectancy at birth, but with an adjustment for time spent in poor health. See, it's almost similar to Sullivan's. Okay, but the words are different. This was formerly known as DALE or disability adjusted life expectancy, but now it is known as health adjusted life expectancy or HALE. When we were students, we read it as DALE. So therefore, life expectancy at birth, but with an adjustment for time spent in poor health. It is equal to the number of years in full health that a newborn can expect to live based on current rates of ill health and mortality. So these are all statisticians' delight. He will tell you when a newborn is born and he calculates the life expectancy as per the standardized rates or the existing age-specific disease rates, and then he also calculates the HALE or the healthy life expectancy or the health-adjusted life expectancy. Then we have quality adjusted life or measure disease burden, including both quality and quantity of life lived. This is used in assessing the value for money of a medical intervention. Suppose we have a disease going on and we make an intervention. What is the value of that intervention? Cost effectiveness is calculated by QALY or quality adjusted life years. Okay, one QALY is a year of life lived in perfect health. That is 1 year of life into one utility value. Each year of perfect health is valued at 1. Slightly complicated. Your book gives this surprisingly. I also had to read through it and then modify the slide. Just remember Hale, Quali. These are important things which you can at least jot down when you write an answer. Even if you don't explain properly, we know that you have heard of it. But we've just read what is health adjusted life years, and we've also known that there is something called as QALY, or quality adjusted life years. Then we have disability free life expectancy, or DFLE, also called as active life expectancy. Average number of years an individual is expected to live free of disability if current pattern of mortality and disability continue to apply. So therefore, again, almost the same thing, but this is, again, I told you, a statistician's delight. He loves to play with these kind of figures and words like disability free life expectancy and health adjusted life expectancy and all these things. So remember, disability free life expectancy is also a disability indicator. Why I'm spending a little time with disability indicators is mortality, morbidity, and all the other indicators will be repeated as we go along the chapters. But these disability indicators are not given anywhere else in the book. So just go through it once when the lecture is over and you have some time. If you have the book park with you, just go through these, underline them, read them, and also keep them somewhere in your mind to read them before the exam. Now, disability adjusted life years is 1 year of healthy life lost if one DALY is there in your life. It measures the overall disease burden in a defined population. So, disability adjusted life years is overall disease burden in a defined population. DALY, or DALY, is equal to YLL plus YLD. Years of life lost or lost life plus years lost to disability. Okay, this is the formula given in the book. By the end of this, you will be a little confused, but doesn't matter. At least you've heard these words. There are various nutritional indicators that must have been told to you when the chapter on nutrition was taught. I will not go through them. Anthropometric measurements, height, prevalence of low birth weight, and all these things must have been told to you. And there are various others, indicators of nutritional status. Birth weight, like we jotted down on a growth chart, school child nutrition, all these things are there. Then we have various measuring devices, we have mid-arm circumference, we have healthcare delivery indicators, which are important. You often read them in the papers. India is a country with poor healthcare delivery indicators. The doctor population ratio is poor. Doctor nurse ratio is poor. Population bed ratio is also poor. Today we don't have beds in Hyderabad for COVID patients because the population bed ratio is very poor. All the beds are full. We are getting more cases and we can't cater to them. We are telling them to stay in the house. Population per health or subcenter, we can have an indicator like that. And population per trained birth attendant, or DAI. We used to call them as DAIs once upon a time. Now they are trained and therefore they are known as TBAs, or trained birth attendants. So there are various healthcare delivery indicators. We will tell them to you by and by. This is the model of healthcare delivery system which is given in the book, perhaps nothing very important, but this is the doctor population ratio, doctor bed ratio, nurse population ratio, midwife ratio, comparison between India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. You will find that certain indices in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka are far better than the indicators in India. Then there are utilization rates. Okay, like proportion of infants who are fully immunized. We are seeing whether the utilization of immunization program is being continued properly or not. Then we have proportion of pregnant women who receive antenatal care. All these things are examples of utilization rates. Okay. We have social and mental health indicators. It's not mere absence of mental illness. Good mental health is the ability to respond to many varied experiences of life with flexibility and a sense of purpose. So we have various indicators for that. Mental health is a very, very important thing in COVID times. Many of us are going to depression. Many of us are feeling lonely. We have to adjust ourselves. We have to maintain our identity. We have to have a strong sense of self-esteem. All these things will be taught to you in the chapter on mental health. Social well-being is also a very, very important thing. The subject is known as PSM, preventive and social health. Okay, so social well-being is a quality and quantity of an individual, interpersonal ties, and extent of involvement with the community. Quality and quantity of an individual's interpersonal ties, and extent of involvement with the community. So therefore, there is something called a social health, which is very, very important. All of you are socially healthy. And there are various indicators which we will teach you in the chapter on sociology as and when we teach it. Okay, there are various other indicators like environmental indicators, socio-economic indicators that will also be covered in the chapter on sociology, health policy, indicators of quality of life, which we have already covered, social indicators, and basic need indicators. Water pollution indicators, they must have been taught to you in environment. I'm just going through it so that you people just have a fair idea. All this is given in the book in very, very huge paragraphs. You don't have to go through them in detail. Indicators of quality of life, I told you already, PQLI, HDI, we have already discussed them in detail, so one need not go through it again. We have Millennium Development Goals, which were there till 2015. Then we have Sustainable Development Goals, which are now going on up to 2030. Then we have Global Reference List of Core Health Indicators 2018, which is also given in your book. Health status indicators, risk factor indicators, service coverage indicators, health system indicators. You don't have to get confused in all that. Just know the big headings like, Millennium Development Goal indicators, and these are the various health status indicators that we have. Then we have a small paragraph on Niti Aayog health indicators, health index of India. I just saw it in the new edition. You must know what is Niti Aayog. We will teach you in the chapter on health policies. So Niti Aayog also has got a lot of their indicators with which they differentiate between states. They say UP has got a poor health status as compared to Kerala. So they will compare. These are all the jobs of the Health and Welfare Ministry or the Niti Aayog and all that. We have countries divided into developed and developing regions. We all know India is a developing country. It has not yet developed and reached the status of certain foreign countries like in the West, US and the UK and the other Scandinavian countries, and in the East, Japan, and perhaps even China. So there is a lot of contrast in health, which is called as health gap. And developed countries only develop from developing. Way back, about 200 years back, there was a lot of industrialization which happened in Europe. And therefore, it emerged from being a developing continent to a developed continent. And this is what is called as epidemiological transition. We will cover this in the chapter on epidemiology again. As life expectancy increases, the major causes of death and disability in general shift from communicable, maternal, and perinatal causes to chronic, non-communicable ones. And therefore, that's one of the indicators that we are now becoming a developed nation. I don't know how, but they say that the moment communicable diseases become less and the non-communicable or the lifestyle diseases are more, then we go into an epidemiological transition phase. So remember this word, epidemiological transition. There is an urban health, rural health divide. We all know certain diseases are common in rural areas, certain in urban areas. Some diseases are now merging between rural and urban, and a lot of factors are important for this, which are demography, maternal and child health, socioeconomic, family planning, drinking water, sanitation, hygiene, awareness, health service philosophies. The spelling of service is wrong. There are various health service philosophies. These are not very important. They are given in the book in small paragraphs, healthcare, health system. You can just go through it. I will not try to deal with these and confuse you further. Okay? So we all know what is the health system, what is the healthcare. Health system, we will teach you. This is an important slide. We will tell you what is primary healthcare, secondary healthcare, and tertiary healthcare. When you come to your 7th semester, we will teach you all that. We will tell you what is primary healthcare, which is very important and an exam question. We have certain health policies in India and the world. The WHO formulates certain health policies. The Indian government formulates health policies, which may have been taught to you when you were taught the community medicine, the communicable diseases chapter. Along with each disease, they also describe the national health policies. Health for all is something which I already told you. Health team is something which me and you belong to. A group of persons who share a common health goal and common objectives determined by community needs towards achievement of which each member contributes in accordance with his or her competence. Each member, it is not number, and skills, and respecting the functions of the other. So therefore, we all know what's a health team. These are given in the book in paragraphs, so I'm just covering them. A health team consists of physicians, nurses, social workers, health assistants, trained eyes, village health guides, ASHA workers, everybody. Health research is something which we will cover in the chapter on health policy, so we will tell you about that later. So that brings us to the